in the year 2001 while the world was still reeling from the September 11th attacks. A man sitting alone in a small flat in North London quietly broke into the most heavily guarded computer networks on Earth. He was not a spy. He was not a foreign agent. He was not working for any government or intelligence agency. He was an unemployed systems administrator with a slow dial-up internet connection, a cheap personal computer, and one burning obsession. He believed the United States government was hiding proof of extraterrestrial life. His name was Gary McKinnon. And what he found inside those Pentagon servers would shake the foundations of the most powerful military institution in human history. This is the story the government never wanted you to fully understand. Gary McKinnon was born in Glasgow, Scotland, in 1966. By the time he reached adulthood, he had developed an extraordinary aptitude for computers, not through formal education, but through raw curiosity. He taught himself how networks operated, how firewalls were built, and more importantly, how they could be walked through. In the late 1990s, he became deeply fascinated with UFO conspiracy theories. Not the tabloid variety. He was specifically drawn to the idea that the United States military had recovered non-human technology and was reverse engineering it in secret facilities. He believed that evidence of this would exist somewhere inside military computer systems. So he decided to go looking. Between February 2001 and March 2002, McKinnon systematically penetrated 97 United States military and government computer networks. His targets were not random. He moved methodically through networks belonging to the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Department of Defense, and NASA. He used a basic piece of software called Remotely Anywhere, a remote access tool that was, at the time, entirely legal and commercially available. His method was almost insultingly simple. He wrote a small script that scanned military networks for computers running Windows operating systems with no password protection. He found hundreds of them, hundreds of machines inside the Pentagon. With no passwords, the most powerful military force in human history had left the digital equivalent of its front door wide open. Once inside, McKinnon moved carefully. He described himself later as being meticulous, almost surgical. He would access a machine, look at what was stored there, copy files he found interesting, and then move on. He did this for over a year, 13 months of undetected access to the beating heart of American military intelligence. He browsed personnel files. He looked at internal memos. He accessed spreadsheets that appeared to list the names of what he described as non-terrestrial officers, names and rankings that did not match any known branch of the United States military. He found references to something called the Solar Warden program, which he believed described a classified space fleet. He found photographs, high-resolution images of what he described as large cylindrical craft in orbit around Earth. Images he claimed were being processed and airbrushed by government technicians before public release. Whether those files contained what McKinnon believed they contained is something the American government has never publicly addressed. Because the moment they acknowledged what he had seen, they would have to explain why it existed. What the government did instead was come after him with everything they had. In March 2002, McKinnon was arrested by British authorities at the request of American law enforcement. The U.S. Department of Justice indicted him on 7 counts of computer fraud and related activity. The charges were devastating. American prosecutors claimed McKinnon had caused $700,000 in damages to military computer systems. They accused him of deleting critical files from Army computers at Fort Myer immediately after the September 11 attacks, at the exact moment when America's military command was at its most vulnerable and needed those systems operational. They described him as the single biggest military computer hack in United States history. The sentence they sought was extraordinary. If extradited to America and convicted on all charges, Gary McKinnon was looking at 70 years in a federal prison. 70 years. For a man with no prior criminal record. For a man who never sold what he found. For a man who never handed intelligence to a foreign power. For a man who operated alone from his flat with a dial-up connection and a legal software tool. The disproportion of that response tells you everything you need to know about how frightened the American government was. What followed was one of the longest and most watched extradition battles in British legal history. McKinnon fought the extradition order for 10 years. 10 years of hearings, appeals, and rulings that wound their way through every level of the British court system and became a defining debate about the fairness of the UK-US extradition treaty signed in 2003. His case attracted support from across the political spectrum. Human rights organizations backed him. Members of Parliament spoke on his behalf in the House of Commons. Celebrities and public figures rallied to his cause. His mother, Janice Sharp, became one of the most tenacious campaign advocates Britain had ever seen. She lobbied prime ministers, appeared on television, wrote a book, and refused to allow her son to disappear quietly into the American prison system. During this period, McKinnon was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. Medical experts testified that extradition and imprisonment in the United States would pose a serious and genuine risk to his mental health and potentially to his life. This diagnosis became a central pillar of his defense. The argument that a man with a neurodevelopmental condition who had acted out of obsessive curiosity rather than criminal malice should not be sacrificed to satisfy American political pressure. In 2012, after a decade of legal combat, the British Home Secretary, Theresa May, announced that Gary McKinnon would not be extradited to the United States. The decision was made on human rights grounds. His mental and physical health made extradition unjust, May concluded. The American government was furious. Diplomatic cables released later showed the depth of Washington's frustration. They had wanted McKinnon in a courtroom in Virginia. They had wanted to make an example of him. They never got the chance. And here is where the story becomes truly strange. McKinnon was never prosecuted in the United Kingdom either. The Crown Prosecution Service examined the case and decided there was insufficient basis to bring charges under British law. No trial, no conviction, no prison sentence. A man who the United States government described as having caused catastrophic damage to military networks, who they claimed deleted files during the most serious terrorist attack in American history, walked free, completely free. The British government paid him no compensation. It imposed no conditions. Gary McKinnon simply ceased to be a defendant and became, once again, a private citizen. Think about what that means. The Americans said he was the most dangerous military hacker they had ever encountered. The British government looked at the evidence and decided he wasn't worth prosecuting. One of those two positions is a political performance. And given what McKinnon said he found inside those servers, it is worth asking very seriously which. Government had more to lose from a public trial. A trial would have required evidence. Evidence would have required disclosure. Disclosure would have meant opening in open court. A conversation about what exactly Gary McKinnon had accessed inside classified Pentagon systems, about those spreadsheets with non-terrestrial officers, about those photographs about Solar Warden. The US government would have had to stand in a courtroom and either confirm or deny the existence of programs that, officially, do not exist. They chose silence. They paid the political cost of losing the extradition battle. They accepted the diplomatic embarrassment, because the alternative, a public trial where McKinnon's defense team could subpoena evidence and question witnesses about classified programs, was simply not something they were willing to risk. Gary McKinnon lives quietly in the United Kingdom today. He has given interviews over the years in which he maintains without drama or embellishment that what he saw was real. He is not a conspiracy theorist performing for attention. He is a methodical, technically sophisticated man who spent 30 months inside the most classified computer networks on Earth and came out the other side saying the same thing he said when he went in, that there are programs the American government is running that the public is not permitted to know about. The United States government spent 10 years and enormous political capital trying to silence him. Then, when silence became impossible, they simply walked away dull in the world of intelligence and state power. That kind of retreat is never accidental. Governments do not abandon decade-long extradition battles over principle. They abandon them over calculation. Someone somewhere in the machinery of American national security made a cold and deliberate decision that Gary McKinnon in a British flat was safer than Gary McKinnon in an American courtroom. The question that nobody in power has ever answered, and the question that makes this case so permanently, deeply unsettling, is this. What exactly did he see that made him worth that calculation? The servers have been patched. The passwords have been changed. The files, whatever they contained, have been reclassified or destroyed or moved somewhere. No dial-up connection and no remote access tool will ever reach again. Gary McKinnon cannot go back. The door he walked through for 13 months has been welded shut, but he was there. He walked those digital corridors. He read those files. And the most powerful government on Earth decided, after 10 years of fighting to bring him to justice, that the safest thing they could do was let him go. Draw your own conclusions, but draw them carefully. Because in a story this size, with stakes this high, the fact that you are only hearing about it at all means someone somewhere made a mistake. And mistakes, in the world of classified military intelligence, are the only cracks through which the truth ever gets out.